Hello and welcome to this edition of Wineskins. I'm your host, Father Jim Corda. Wineskins features reflections on the lives of the saints and the sacred scriptures, along with thoughts on a variety of topics and issues from a Catholic perspective. It is brought to you by the Annual Bishop's Appeal, the Catholic Communication Campaign, and St. Paul's Catholic Books and Gifts, a division of the Society of St. Paul. During our interview segment, we will share a special history of the Diocese of Youngstown in celebration of the 75th anniversary. We will also look at the life and times of St. Ignatius of Loyola, and we will hear a reflection on the readings for this 17th Sunday in Ordinary Time. That and more on Wineskins. In our current issue, we will hear from Pam Davies and John Polanski. Joining me again is Pam Davies and John Polanski from the Western Reserve Independent Living Center. Welcome back to Wineskins.
Thank you.
You know, the last time you were here, you gave us some wonderful information on the center, but one of the areas that we really didn't talk about is how you are funded. And for the wonderful work that you do for those people with disabilities, that's really an important facet. And I think for the folks that are with us, if they would like to help you out or they would like to have more information on what they can do financially to help you, if you can give us that information.
Our outreach to the community certainly does involve fundraising, and we've had various projects over the years, typical things for this area, spaghetti dinners, raffles, things of that nature. And it goes hand in hand with our getting information out into the community about who we are. People hear that title, Independent Living Center, and they tend to think in terms of a residence.
Right.
And obviously that's not what we are. It's the title of centers throughout the state. What we can do as far as people making contributions, we're interested in their time and their talents as well as what they would want to contribute to our financial well-being. Pam will talk a little bit more about how we're funded through federal funds and things of that nature through our grant funding. We're also interested in people letting us know through their contact how they can be a part of what we do.
Pam, if you could just tell us briefly again the mission of the Western Reserve Independent Living Center, and then also how you are federally funded.
Our mission is basically that a person with a disability have the same rights and choices as any other individual, whether it be through adaptations or through laws. And like I said, we're consumer controlled. Our money comes through the state budget. Opportunities for Ohioans with Disabilities, they are like the financial unit that flows the money through to us. And like everybody else, we've been cut. That, and we're always looking for new board members or volunteers. So that's another way the community could help. I put flyers in doctors' offices that have patients that might need help. We're trying to get the word out. If somebody would just like to do flyers for us and take a pack and put them somewhere in their community. Since we cover 4 counties, it's kind of hard to. Our office is in Trumbull, so.
The last time you were with us, we talked about your advocacy element and facet. What are some of the other areas that you provide to people and for people with disabilities?
We do the information and referral, and we also have a monthly newsletter that we send out about what's going on in the community, articles, what's going on at the office. We have a list for employment and feeding sites for people that need it in the office. We have adaptive technology, computer and braille classes. We help buy tickets for people in Trumbull County that need to come to the office or a private provider. Peer support, we have monthly classes. We have a volunteer program. We have an art studio downtown Warren. It's called the Collective Palette for artists with disabilities. And we collaborated with the Developmental Disability Fairhaven Foundation with that, and SIFRIN and REM are other organizations that work with them. We have monthly recreation. We have a game day, a crochet day, artistic expression. We have a summer picnic and a Christmas get-together. And when we get them in, we'll donate used computers to individuals with disabilities. Independent living skills, we do budgeting, household management, time management. Some senior apartments have asked us to do bullying, pre-employment skills, and self-advocacy. We're presently doing a program through OOD on self-advocacy to the high school students that are on IEPs. So when they get out of high school and graduate, they know what it is they need to do to get into the adult world. We also do disability awareness training for agencies, businesses, or people in the community that need it.
John, I know that you're the president of the board. What is the role of the board, not only just through funding and that, but what's the role of the board primarily for people with disabilities? What can you do, or what do you do for them specifically?
Primarily and specifically to support what our wonderful staff does. Just thinking about that long list of services that Pam just went through, and every one of those is provided by a staff that's extremely dedicated. Our support of the staff, I think, is about the most important thing that the board does.
And Pam, in closing, please give us some information on phone number, contact, Facebook.
I'd like to say also that our board has to be 51% people with disabilities, and our staff is 50% people with disabilities. So we have an understanding there. It's, again, 330-372-3325, and WRILC.org is our website.
Pam Davies, John Polanski, thanks again for being with us, and God bless you in your work at the Independent Living Center.
Thanks for having us.
For Wineskins, I'm Father Jim Corda. To tell us more about the life and times of St. Ignatius of Loyola is Mariann Yeager. She is from St. Christine Church in Youngstown.
Born in 1491 in the Basque section of Spain, Ignatius Lopez of Loyola was the youngest of 11 children. He was trained for a military career, but it came to an abrupt end when he was wounded in the Battle of Pamplona in 1521. During a long convalescence, he read The Life of Christ by Rudolph of Saxony and a collection of the lives of the saints. These readings proved to be actual graces that led to his conversion in the same year that Martin Luther took up residence in the castle at Wartburg during his crisis. After a vision of the Blessed Virgin Mary, Ignatius made a pilgrimage to the Benedictine Abbey at Montserrat to venerate the famous Madonna. He then settled nearby, where he was a guest of the Dominicans, and made a rough draft of his spiritual exercises. The following year, he made a pilgrimage to Jerusalem, where he was a guest of the Franciscans. Returning to Spain, he began the study of Latin, and then went to the university for further studies. There he was imprisoned on suspicion of being an Illuminist. So he moved to Salamanca, where he was again questioned and then imprisoned for a time. On the Feast of the Assumption in 1534, Ignatius and 6 companions, including the future St. Francis Xavier, gathered in a chapel at Montmartre and vowed to live lives of poverty and chastity and to go to Palestine to preach the gospel. That failing, they would offer themselves to the Pope and go wherever he would send them. But on the advice of a physician, Ignatius returned to Spain in 1535 in order to regain his health. 2 years later, the entire group met in Venice, intending to sail for Palestine. But hostilities between Venice and the Turks made it impossible. Consequently, they proceeded to Rome, where Ignatius was ordained a priest in 1538, and the Society of Jesus was approved by papal bull in 1540. In 1556, St. Ignatius died suddenly in Rome at the age of 65, after 15 years as superior of the society. He was canonized in 1622, and Pope Pius XI named him patron of spiritual exercises and retreats. The prayers of the Mass present several characteristics of St. Ignatius. First, in the opening prayer, we read, "Father, you gave St. Ignatius of Loyola to your church to bring greater glory to your name." The motto of the Society of Jesus is for the greater glory of God. The same sentiment is expressed in the first reading for the Mass, taken from St. Paul's first letter to the Corinthians. In the prayer over the gifts, we read that the Eucharist is the source of all holiness. Ignatian spirituality is eminently Christocentric, for which reason the antiphon for the Canticle of Zechariah states, "Would that I might know Christ and the power of his resurrection, and that I might share in his sufferings." Hence, Ignatian spirituality proposes certain virtues as essential for the imitation of Christ: obedience, poverty, and humility. In the Latin version of the prayer after communion, we ask God that we may direct our entire life to the everlasting glory of His name. The entrance antiphon of the Mass is from St. Paul's letter to the Philippians. At the name of Jesus, every knee must bend, in heaven, on earth, and under the earth. Every tongue should proclaim, to the glory of God the Father, Jesus Christ is Lord. For Wineskins, I'm Mariann Yeager.
We are people of God in the Roman Catholic Diocese of Youngstown. Blessed with a rich variety of backgrounds and talents, we are a living reflection of the universal Church. Through our baptism, we continue Christ's mission to further the kingdom of God through the human family. We share our living faith by proclaiming the gospel in word and example. Together, we celebrate Christ's presence in worship and sacrament. In a spirit of justice, mercy, and love, we dedicate ourselves not only to minister to the people in the 6 counties of northeastern Ohio, but also to minister to the world community. The Diocese of Youngstown, which celebrates its 75th anniversary in 2018, was established in 1943. Its humble beginnings can be traced back to 1817 in Dungannon, Ohio, where the first parish in all northeastern Ohio was established. St. Philip Neri was founded under the title of St. Paul's Settlement. It was to this settlement in Columbiana County that Father Edward Fenwick, a priest and Dominican missionary, made his first visit. It would be his job to plant the Catholic Church in young America's 17th state of Ohio. Miles west from Dungannon, in a place called Canton, other pioneer Catholics gathered in that same year to celebrate Mass with Father Fenwick. 6 years later, in 1823, the second oldest church in the Diocese of Youngstown would be established at St. John the Baptist in Stark County, now one of 3 basilicas in the Catholic Diocese of Youngstown. In Portage County, around Randolph-Suffield, below Kent, German Catholics settled. The first parish established there was St. Joseph in 1831, and a church was built in 1835. Father John Newman, a Redemptorist priest visiting the area, was sent to Randolph for a 10-day mission in 1841 to help heal the divisions there. Perhaps that is what made him a saint. The number of Catholics continued to grow throughout the mid to late 19th century, and with it, the number of parishes to serve them. In Trumbull County, St. Mary's Mission was established in 1837. 10 years later, St. Columba Parish was founded in Mahoning County and would eventually serve as the cathedral church and Youngstown as its see city. In 1856, St. Joseph Parish in Ashtabula was begun. In 1943, the northeast corner of the state of Ohio was established as the Diocese of Youngstown. The Diocese of Youngstown, like all Catholic dioceses, is a community of churches and believers under the leadership of the bishop, who serves to unify and coordinate its Christian mission and ministries. The man who was sent to serve the young diocese was James Augustine McFadden, at that time the auxiliary bishop of Cleveland. His charge was to do for the 6 counties in the northeastern part of the state what young Father Fenwick did for those same young communities over a century ago. McFadden's task was largely organizational. A school office was established, a Catholic Charities organization was begun, a tribunal was organized, as were the diocesan deaneries. Lay organizations and councils were founded, and religious communities, like the Society and Daughters of St. Paul and the Oblate Sisters of the Sacred Heart of Jesus, were invited to serve the new diocese. Some communities were already present, like the Ursuline Sisters of Youngstown, since 1873, the Humility of Mary Sisters, known as Blue Nuns, serving from their mother house in neighboring Villa Maria, Pennsylvania, since 1864, and the Precious Blood Priests, Sisters, and Brothers. In 1949, Bishop McFadden's labors, combined with failing health, led to the appointment of Bishop Emmett M. Walsh as administrator of the diocese with the right of succession. Walsh came from Charleston, South Carolina. He became the ordinary in 1952 upon McFadden's death. The Walsh era of the diocese formally ran until his death in 1968. Under his leadership, the high school structure was developed, and the Catholic school system was greatly expanded. A tragic fire destroyed the diocesan cathedral in 1954, but by 1958, Bishop Walsh had dedicated the new cathedral, which continues to serve Catholics today. In 1960, Walsh consecrated Father James W. Malone as the first auxiliary bishop of Youngstown. Together, with the assistance of laity, religious, and clergy, they were responsible for shepherding the diocese, which had grown to over 286,000 Catholics in 112 parishes. By the end of the Second Vatican Council in 1965, Bishop Walsh was an exhausted and sick man. Malone became administrator of the diocese in 1966, and in 1968, upon Walsh's death, was named the third ordinary of the Diocese of Youngstown. On his shoulders fell the responsibility for implementing not only the many changes called for by Vatican II, but more importantly, the new style and spirit which the Council called for. The bishops who had attended Vatican II experienced the Church in an entirely new way and were themselves subject to profound conversion. Their challenge upon returning to their diocese was to share their conversion with all God's people and involve them more fully in the life and mission of the Catholic Church. In 1974, William A. Hughes was ordained a bishop and became the second auxiliary for the Diocese of Youngstown. In 1979, he became the ordinary of Covington, Kentucky. In 1980, Benedict C. Franzetta became the third auxiliary for the Diocese of Youngstown. He remained here until his death in 2006. Upon Malone's retirement in 1995, Bishop Thomas J. Tobin, auxiliary of the Diocese of Pittsburgh, became the fourth ordinary of the Diocese of Youngstown. He became the Bishop of Providence, Rhode Island in 2005. In 2007, George V. Murray, ordinary of St. Thomas in the American Virgin Islands, was appointed as the fifth bishop of the Diocese of Youngstown. One of the significant achievements in the Murray era began in late 2014, when the Diocese of Youngstown formally engaged in a consultative effort with clergy and laity, representing all ages throughout the Church, to propose actions that would improve parish and diocesan life. In July 2015, the pastoral plan, which grew out of this diocesan-wide effort, was promulgated and identified 7 themes that emerge as important to the faithful in the Diocese of Youngstown. Its ultimate goal was to encourage deeper discipleship among the faithful, and in turn advance the mission of the Church in northeastern Ohio. Those themes include service, evangelization, family life, worship and prayer, discipleship, faith formation, catechesis, finances, and administration. This pastoral plan for evangelization encourages the faithful to trust in Jesus Christ and to accept his call to discipleship. The Church in northeastern Ohio has changed considerably from its humble beginnings at St. Paul Settlement near Dungannon, when Father Fenwick passed through in 1817. The Church in the Diocese of Youngstown tries to hasten, facilitate, and create the environment wherein the kingdom of God can go forward. And it is in that same spirit that the Diocese of Youngstown celebrates 75 years with pride in the past and faith in the future. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
33 million Americans have descended into poverty. And as their futures fall, so does our nation's. Church World Service believes that being self-reliant is a joy everyone should share. So around the block or around the world, share the joy.
Our music today is provided by the St. Louis Jesuits. It is from their CD called the 40th Anniversary Edition of Earthen Vessels. You can find that and more albums at ocp.org.
Seek the Lord while he may be found. Call to him while he is still near. Today is the day, and now the proper hour to forsake our sinful lives and turn to the Lord. Seek the Lord while he may be found. Call to him while he is still near. As high as the sky is above the earth, so high above our ways, the ways of the Lord. Seek the Lord while he may be found. Call to him while he is still near. Finding the Lord, let us cling to him. His words, his ways, lead us to life. Seek the Lord while he may be found. Call to him while he is still near.
On this, the 17th Sunday in Ordinary Time, we will hear more about the sacred scriptures by Father Zack Coulter. He is a parochial vicar at St. Christine Church in Youngstown.
One of the most iconic miracles of Jesus Christ is the multiplication of the loaves and fishes. We see in this week's gospel that a boy who was willing to give up 5 loaves and 2 fish was able to feed an entire multitude through the love and through Jesus Christ. So much was his gift that it fed all of the countless thousands, and on top of that, there were 12 wicker baskets left over. But you know what? This isn't a singular event. We see this miracle happen more than once in the Gospels. And more than that, it actually occurs in the Old Testament too. In our first reading today from the book of Kings, we see Elisha. He feeds 100 people with 20 loaves. Again, we come back to this idea of multiplication, that with a small gift on one person's part, God is able to take that small gift and multiply it and make it 100-fold over. We see this idea of multiplication again and again in the scriptures. Jesus says with the proper love, we can turn our gift into 10 and 20 and 60-fold. So too, this is our mission. We are to go out and spread the love of Jesus Christ. And we can do this in multiple ways. Think of a family. Through the love of a mother and a father, children come into the world. and the faith is spread to a new generation. Through the work of missionaries, parts of the world that have never heard the gospel message have now heard it and can respond to it with love and devotion. Think of the work of educators who take on pupils and bring them the faith in a new way, showing them the beautiful world that God has created and showing it how it reflects His own goodness. So too, we must find our own way to multiply the faith God has given of us. Each of us has been given a talent. Each of us has been given a gift, and it is our job to take that gift and use it to glorify God's kingdom. It will be different for each one of us. Each one of us has called to a different vocation, a different way of life. For some of us, it might be priesthood or religious life. For some of us, it might be married life. For some of us, it might be single life. No matter what we are called to, we can use it to glorify God. We only need to look at the example of the saints who have come before us to see the multitude of ways that we can glorify God, that we can make the world a better place, and that we can bring the gospel message to the world. So the challenge then for each of us is to find out what our talents are. Find out what we're good at. Find out what God has given to us. Some of us, they might be small talents. Some of us, they might be big and obvious. But whatever we have, we can use them to glorify God. Even the humblest among us can make the world a better place. Even the smallest can say a prayer, and a prayer can change the world. So we shouldn't be intimidated about this gospel message. We shouldn't be intimidated about how we need to go into the world. It might seem daunting. What can I do? I'm so small. I'm so weak. And yet, it's not about us, but about God working through us. That is why we can depend on Him. If we trust in Him and use His strength, then we know we can go out into the world and make that difference. So let's use the strength of God. Use the gifts He's given. Make them stronger. Make them something beautiful in the world. And through those gifts, we can bring others to Christ, and they too can then change the world. For Wineskins, I'm Father Zachary Coulter.
The gospel today of the multiplication of the loaves and fishes is most familiar to us. It is the only miracle found in all four gospels. How can you share what you have been given to satisfy those who are hungry? Wineskins is made possible through the annual Bishop's Appeal, the Catholic Communication Campaign, and St. Paul's Catholic Books and Gifts. Our program is produced by CTNY, the Catholic Telecommunications Network of Youngstown. I'm Father Jim Corda, thanking you for being with us today. Have a blessed week.